Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. Joining us in this episode, Mark Hayes, aka Purple Hayes. I got a friend of mine, a SF brother of mine that is actually, I just thought of this. His last name is Hayes, and you know what his nickname is? Purple. Thank you very much, Prince. Mark, man, great to have you and good to see you today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about to talk and chat with you guys.
Yeah, and I got my burning question for you, man, and because you went to Vandy, right?
Yeah, I wasn't smart or rich, but I went to Vandy.
Yeah, I mean, I know you, and it's like, wow, that's impressive, dude. And those of you who don't know, Vanderbilt's a pretty decent school on the academic side. But engineering, and now you are a real estate dude. How the heck did you go from engineering, from designing, building something, to now buying and managing that same sort of something?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, you know, um, people kind of like to give recommendations and tell you what you should be or what you should do, as you're growing up. And sometimes it's good advice, and sometimes it's maybe not so great, or they are trying to portray, themselves onto you. But no, I had a ninth grade algebra teacher, and she was awesome. And algebra was just came easy to me. Math was easy to me. English and reading and comprehension and grammar, all that stuff was not easy for me. So, she just said, you know what, you should look into engineering. Well, I was in ninth grade. Well, I didn't even know what that was. So then, when I start looking at colleges and what I want to do, but my senior year, maybe even part of my junior year, I remembered her. And so I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. So I applied to schools that had engineering. And so I didn't even know what type of engineering. So, I go to the summer orientation at Vanderbilt, and they're like, well, what type of engineering do you want to be in? And there's all these people that are going to electrical and mechanical and civil, and I didn't know. So I just said engineering science. So after my freshman year, I started getting more geared and going down the direction of civil engineering. So I got that degree, and got out of college, and got a job here in Nashville for a small consulting firm. And so what we did was geotechnical engineering and environmental. So we would do like soil borings and explore the site before they built on it, or even a lot of times before they even purchased the property. And then once construction came along, we did consulting for various things with the subsurface and fill and concrete testing and that sort of stuff. Well, I had in my mind as an engineer going to school that I would be like designing the things, and it would just be, a lot different than what it really was in real life. We read a lot of reports, and like I literally was like falling asleep writing these reports sometimes. Like they were boilerplate, kind of boring, uh, papers that we needed to write for our, for our clients. But so I was like, this is not really something I want to do forever. So then I go back to Asheville, North Carolina, where I'm from, one Christmas, and I'd been working for a few years, and he had graduated from college, but like he never really had this job, but he had bought some rental properties, and I was like, how the heck did you do that? like
You're thinking he's like a real estate mogul tycoon, probably at that point in your life too. Right?
Yeah, he didn't have a full-time job, uh, and he had this cabin a little outside of Asheville, and then he had bought this other place near where we grew up, and so he kind of just showed me on a little legal pad, some numbers and how he did the transaction, and then he let me borrow. I don't know if you remember the late night TV ads of Carlton Sheets.
Mhm.
So he had this Carlton Sheets course called, No Money Down, and so back then it was cassettes. This is like early 2000s, and so I started listening to that on my way back from Asheville to Nashville, and I was just hooked. It just sounded so interesting to me. One, it was, I could be in business for myself, and just the world of real estate in general you know, just sounded like there was a lot of opportunity other than engineering. So
That's funny because man, somebody told me the like success rate, but not even success rate. I think it was like completion rate on courses like that. Even now, when like when we put stuff out with Tribe and Purpose, the completion rate is only like 20% or maybe even less. So the fact that you listened to it and then said, I agree with that. Let me put this into play. That's you're like that's probably down in like the 5% of all the people that I was going to say bought the tape, but you didn't buy the tape.
yeah,
Smart move there too.
borrowed.
There's your best decision, business decision. First and best, yeah. My tongue is tied up this morning. First and best business decision. There we go. Got it out of my mouth that time.
Well, yeah, and so I fumbled my way through it. I mean, listening to it for the first time, he's sitting there talking about different real estate terminology and title companies, and I'm in my early to mid 20s, and I'm like, what, I don't know what he's talking about, and so I listened to it again, and then I fumbled my way through it and just tried to do a few things, but a lot of the thing that kind of propelled me into the business after that was just meeting other real estate investors in the Nashville area, and just picking their brain, and just asking them out to lunch. There was one guy that I went to go look at a house, he had for sale. He was another investor, and he was just like 3 years older than me, so in his late 20s, and he was just so sharp and very confident, and so I was like, I like this guy. He knows his stuff. So then we didn't end up doing a deal there in the beginning, but like he was also very helpful. So I called him up and said, hey, can I just shadow you? Can I just hang out with you for a day? And that was just such a good learning experience. And we actually became good friends. And I bought my first 2 properties from him, and he helped me get contractors and that sort of thing. The interesting thing is, so if you kind of say those are the 2 main guys. My buddy I grew up with, Zach Young, that introduced me, and then my first mentor, Steve Fouché. They aren't even in real estate investing anymore. They were more of a big picture, and kind of they had some some financial troubles in 2008 or whatever. There's some numerous different reasons why they're not in anymore. I think Steve actually always desired to become a policeman, and so he's now a policeman here in this area, but he's gotten back to buying some rental properties in the last few years. And so he actually turned around and called me back and started like asking me questions. So it was kind of a neat little reversal there on the mentoring.
You mentioned the 2008 on that. I was already thinking that as you were saying, you got started listening to those cassettes early 2000s.
Yeah.
What was it like being inside that industry during that time, and what are some learned lessons that you've had moving forward since then?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, this is the thing about real estate investing is everybody, is like, oh, it's a down market, and some people talk negative about that, or they'll say, oh, it's, it's a seller, it's a great seller's market. Everything's too expensive. You can find deals no matter what the market is, and so you can be successful in whatever market it is. So I think what it really boils down to is mitigating risk, and being being smart financially, and controlling the financial end of business. So a lot of people get into real estate investing because they're like, oh my gosh, I can make so much money, and you might see some guys that go out, or gals, and go out, and they're very aggressive, and they bought a bunch of properties, and they're churning and selling them, and it looks like they're very successful. And then those are the ones that you also see that fail and collapse. They either weren't managing their money well, or they were just so busy that they weren't looking into their cash flow as well as they should be. So you can get through any market. It's just being smart with it.
High risk,
Yeah,
high
that's-
reward, right?
What's that?
High risk, high reward.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it's
one
a
thing. What I
long
was
game.
going to say, just real quick, what I was going to say was, I think the interesting thing there, and I've had this conversation with some people, not that I have any experience in the real estate, but because I study econ, my friends like to ask me questions about things. But we were talking about the current housing market and that kind of stuff, and I think there is this big gap of people talk on this big scale. And it's like all of this stuff is happening, and market's going to do this, and home values, and all this different stuff. And then there's the very different conversation, which is like me buying a house in Tucson to live in. And it's like there's very, very different ways of looking at it. And it's like the important thing there, and you could probably apply this to all sorts of industries, is being able to separate like the macro analysis to like the micro situation that you're actually in. Because the macro analysis, it's trends. What's the one I've said a few times to you, Dad? Average listing time for a house right now for the last like 6 months is like 10 days.
Mhm.
That's national. That is not Tucson, Arizona. That is not, Denver. Actually, shoot, Denver, Colorado is probably like 2 days. But
Denver's probably less than 5. Two probably.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that, where you're getting this like big picture news all the time, and then you're also needing to look at the more specific aspects? How do you balance those two?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to. I like to keep my ears and eyes open on the big picture and the whole market in general, just nationally, and read articles about what's kind of going on, but then also focus in and learn more about the markets that I'm interested in, or that I'm lending in, and just talking with others in those markets, just because like every market's different. And so it's just having that recognition that when you're looking at things as a whole, and again, media likes to have articles and titles that grab your attention, but reading it with a grain of salt, realizing, okay, this is a national thing versus a regional or even a state or city type thing. And even within a city, in Nashville, when I was getting started 20 years ago, there's a neighborhood right across from where my office is, called Sylvan Park, and it was already like it was up and coming, but to me it was still expensive to buy as an investment, because I was just getting started, and trying to learn. And so an entry level investment property there was like 150,000. Well, I started looking over here where my office is now, where I have a lot of rentals now, and I've built homes over the years, and it's called The Nations. And so what's funny is, talking to my friends and family and just other people that I run into that didn't necessarily know what I did, and I just said, well, yeah, I'm investing in real estate primarily over in the nations. And a lot of people go, this 15 plus years ago, they go, where's that? And I said, well, it's across Charlotte Avenue from Sylvan Park. Oh yeah, Sylvan Park. So back then, I was buying properties for around $50,000 in the nations versus 150, because that was affordable to me. And I knew, well, it's eventually got to cross the street, and get popular. There's not like this giant wall here. So, it was, and it has, and so it's, yeah, market to market, but even, studying neighborhoods and areas is important too.
You know what I'm fascinated by, and I want to jump into this a bit, is your risk tolerance, because I'm, as an engineer, I got trained in that and got a lot of little extra training, once I got in the Army, about risk tolerance and handling risk and things like that. And I know, as an engineer, your brain gets hardwired into whoa, that's pretty risky. We better put some extra girders in there and floor, double up on the floor joists, kind of attitude. And then for you to take some hard-earned cash and go, yeah, I think I'll buy this house because, yeah, I'll make some money off it. That's a huge risk shift in my book from me looking at you. So I just want to know, how did you do that, or how did you mitigate that feeling that I'm sure you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, talking about mitigating risk, you're still taking a calculated risk when you're investing, and if you have real estate investors say that they've never lost money, they're lying. So now there might be a few, but I've lost money on deals, and let me tell you, the emotional toll it takes on you when you're losing money on a deal and it's going south is very difficult. Like my first year of marriage, 2005, I went full-time in real estate investing in January, got married in August of 05. My wife and I are just living super frugal. We decided to live on just her income because she was still working. We didn't have kids yet. And so I could grow my business and have some freedom to do that without the stress of bringing home the bacon, if you will. Not the bacon that you were talking about earlier.
You're talking about that sheep bacon.
yeah. But yeah, so, but in 2006, I had two deals going on at the same time that just were not going well. Like they were just eating up the cash flow. I was having trouble selling one. Well, both of them really. The other one of them was kind of a unique situation, but as soon as I let go of those, I made that money back the next month. But during that time, I felt like a failure. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got married. I'm supposed to be the provider and show my wife, as a man, being successful in work is important. And, but, she supported me, and she was a great sounding board when I was going through that, especially, and just to be able to let those go and then just focus on something else. And I made a decision or two on some other opportunities where I made that money back and some within a month, was just very freeing. So, there's the calculated risk for anything, but this is how I look at it. I could say, okay, I'm going to take a calculated risk being a real estate investor because I want to work for myself. I want to build a business that's going to build wealth for me and my family and impact others. If I don't do this, I can always go back to being an engineer. I could go wait tables and make decent money, I mean, when I was getting my real estate business going, I worked like 5 different part-time jobs just to get things going, to survive. So, I mean, I looked at it like that, like, worst case scenario, everything fails or I screw up, my wife's still going to love me, hopefully.
If not, she probably shouldn't be your wife.
Yeah, no, she will. And I can go back and I had something to fall back on.
How do you, because I think that, one of the things you touched on there, and I could see this inside your industry, especially being really difficult. How do you deal with such large sunk costs and not allowing that to play into your decision making? Because that's a huge barrier for a lot of people in investing, entrepreneurship, all of that kind of stuff. So how do you not let that drive you crazy and lead to poor decisions, like you were saying?
Yeah. So I mean, like when I was really just kind of in the heyday of rehabbing or building new homes and kind of had ramped it up for myself where, I mean, to build 6 to 10 homes at one time when it's basically just me. And then I had like a general contractor and an assistant and I was paying a designer, but everybody's pretty much independent contractor. So it's just me. Cash flow is difficult. Like, we would sell a house and you get this big chunk of money. Part of it is net profit and part of it's getting your money back from the deal. And I'd see it in that checkbook and then write a bunch of checks or whatever. And that balance is just back down to almost zero again after I pay myself some and putting everything back into the new project. Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm answering your question right, but it can be difficult. So, I mean, it just goes back to not growing too fast and also, just a lot of planning when it comes to the financial side. I mean, a lot of people ask me, when they're getting started, do I have to have money to be a real estate investor, or do I have to have good credit? Well, the question I ask back is, why do you have bad credit, or why don't you have any money? Like so there's a personal financial thing going on where they've either made some mistakes in the past or they're still making those mistakes, and you need discipline when it comes to the finances. So again, when I got out of college and I was working in engineering, I was driving to different projects a lot during the daytime, and so I started listening to talk radio. And Dave Ramsey, is actually from Nashville, but he's a national author and talk show host, and so he was on the radio, and I really started listening to him, and it really helped me set up me on the personal finances, because I got out of college and had consumer debt and student loan debt and all that. Now, I don't agree with everything he says. He says, like, don't have no debt whatsoever, even on real estate. Now, I've leveraged debt, to purchase real estate and still do. So that's the difference. But I only leverage, assets, when it comes to debt. So I don't have any, consumer debt and car loans and all that other stuff.
Yeah, we got a friend of ours, you and I do, Dan Vega, talks about good debt all the time.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that was interesting. And I guess that's what you mean, is you're leveraging the value of the asset, that hard property. Is that a correct translation of that?
Yeah, correct. And so, and recently in the last few years, when I started doing hard money loans and bridge loans for other investors, I basically have leveraged my rental property portfolio that I've built over the years on kind of a larger or a couple different lines of credit. And so I'm getting rental income still, and that's increased over the years. But I'm actually able to use some equity from the rental properties to then fund loans for other people. So, and then that increases my cash flow more. So it's been a great strategy. But a lot of people, when it comes to real estate, also get partners or do the hard money loans like I do with others. So like when I started, I didn't have any money. I had good credit because at that point when I started, my credit had improved from paying off all that debt from college and everything.
What do you still use from your engineering days, on a regular basis?
Oh yeah. So, one of the main things is, and I don't use it as much now because I'm doing more lending, but when I was doing the construction and rehabbing and building homes, just having that knowledge of foundation work that we did, because buying older homes that you rehab, a lot of them do have foundation issues, and that scares a lot of people away, a lot of other investors. And so I was able to get some good deals on properties that might have had foundation issues, but they necessarily, they didn't really, they weren't as big of a deal as you might think. It might just be like fixing some floor joists or redoing some blocks, here and there. But a lot of people, when they see cracks in the block or some sagging floors, they want to move on to something else.
Yeah, they freak out and run away, right? They say that's and there you go. There's that engineering risk mitigation that comes in. You just slap a couple of extra joists in there to make it up and fix it, right?
Yeah. And when we'd have to get engineers to sign off a letter on it, I could speak intelligently with him about that because I had that background, and I understood what he was saying too. So.
I'm interested, as you went from not loan shark, but the loan guy, the alone guy, not the L-O-A-N guy, but you were standing alone doing it, going on your commiserating with your wife sort of thing. And then you had a kind of a milestone there where primary income, then another milestone to, hey, this is a real business. You had to talk us through those sort of.
Oh yeah. So, when I walked out of my last exam at Vanderbilt, and I still remember this to this day, it was an architectural history. It was like an elective class I took. I walked out of that building, and I said to myself, that's the last test I'm ever going to take. Boy, was I wrong.
Oh,
that was
I love that.
naive.
I told this story before on the podcast of, I remember one of my last finals in college and a kid just throwing this stuff away. Like, I'm never writing an essay again. What the hell are you going to do in your life? You don't have to write anything.
I know. And so boy, I was wrong there. But education has just continued, obviously throughout my business life, and that's the other thing, and the reason why I'm writing this book about how to enter into real estate investing is it's not taught in schools, and so I had to learn a tremendous amount through courses, and like we were talking about earlier, but I would take a little bit from different courses. I'd take a little bit from a seminar, from mentors and just other experts. And so, what was I going to say? There's a few other key components or things that I learned. One was, this was about 2012. So I always thought I had to do everything. I was managing my own properties, managing my own projects. And I went to the seminar that was just like how to run your business. And I asked the lady at the break, and I said, this is where I am. I was only doing like just maybe 1 or 2 rehabs at a time, or maybe 2 to 3, and managing my rentals. And she goes, you need an assistant. And I was like, floored. I was like, what are you talking about? I do all that, So then I hired an assistant, and then that took off a lot of the property management and admin duties. Well, then she worked with me for a few years, and then she decided to go into bookkeeping on her own. And so I had another decision: do I hire another person like that, or do I get a property manager? I got a property manager, and then that was another thing that just totally got lifted off of my shoulders. And then around that time also, I hired a general contractor. So throughout the years in the education and learning from others, I started to delegate more and still work on my business instead of working in my business. Now I have some ebbs and flows, where I might not have someone that can deliver on time or this and that, but so I do have to jump in and do some things. But for the most part, that's been just something that's just totally changed my business, is just having that mentality of, okay, I'm self-employed and I want to control everything. I want to, it's me, it's my money, it's my property. I need to do it all, to delegating and freeing up my time to be able to grow and do other things that are more important.
I'm just curious now. When was the last time you were swinging a hammer in one of your refurbs?
Oh, well, see, that was the blessing in disguise about all this, was I was not very handy. So like the first couple projects, I'm in there. Like I remember one time I was trying to take these old kitchen cabinets off, the doors off, so we could repaint them, and just wanted to replace the hinges. And I was in there with this power drill trying to take the screws off, and they were all old and rusty. And I got so mad I threw the drill through the drywall. And so I was like, this is not for me. So I liked, and through my engineering job, I liked managing and was good at managing other people on a construction project. So I definitely had learned from early on to delegate the construction side of things.
Which is different from a lot of folks. I've got a couple of friends that was what they did. They would spend their evenings and weekends in that house that they bought, and it was just like if they were doing a project in their own house. And so that's very different, right. which allowed you, I think, to leap faster into that next level.
Well, yeah. And so, some people, enjoy that. And I get it. If that's something they enjoy, working on a house, but I remember going on a house tour to look at some other guys doing rehabs. And there was a guy like that. He had a full-time job, and he was working on the house himself on the weekends. And it took him a year to do this little rehab project. And it would have taken a month had he hired people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you factor in the time value of money and the time it's taking him versus what he could have paid someone and then turn around and sell it or rent it, and the income he would have had in those other 11 months or whatever it ended up being, it's tremendous.
Yeah. So what's happening next? I mean, you've got your book that you're working on, which is going to be a huge asset for a lot of folks out there that are like, how do I do this? I mean, how-to books are great, and yours just based on what I know from you and I chatting pre-show and now, it's going to be really helpful for folks. But what's next in that next thing that you're off to?
Yeah, good question. So, I've been doing real estate for 20 years. And so recently I'm venturing out to, I'm in a position now where I can invest in some other things. And so recently my wife and I invested in OME Gear. Jules Weldon and Stacy Pierce own that company. And they have this great product called the Wanderer. And so I met them through a mutual friend. And it started off where they were wanting a bridge loan, which, I do bridge loans for real estate, but I had told our mutual friend that I was wanting to kind of venture out and look at some other businesses. And so, but yeah, so the Wanderer is really neat. It's a cart that has wheels that can roll on soft sand and other terrain. And I just remember as a dad with 4 kids, when they were little, pulling this cart through the soft sand, all the way to the hard sand, down in Florida to lug our stuff. By the time I did that, I was just tired and sweaty, and it wasn't, a fun experience at the beach, lugging all that stuff. And so, what's neat about the cart is it also converts to a chair in a few different positions and a cot. So it's a really neat thing. So if you haven't checked it out, omegear.com, that's my quick plug. but yeah, they, so it started off as a bridge loan, but the more I talked to them and the more I learned about the product and where they were in their business, I wanted to be more involved, and my wife and I did. So that's one thing. I'm investing in a movie, which is kind of exciting because I never thought I would do that. But there's actually a lot of movies that now that can be live streamed or streamed on Netflix and Amazon and all these places. So they don't actually cost a lot to make, but they might still have, an actor or two that's well known and that are, really good stories. And so can't say much about it at this point, but I might have a small role in that film, which will be kind of neat. So don't know
Alfred
what
Hitchcock cameos. Is that Alfred Hitchcock cameo, or are you talking Cam, what's the other guy's name? The more modern Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino. Yeah.
That's right.
I was going to say it's obviously about a real estate investor who is, during the day he's a real estate investor, but at night he's a secret agent.
No, it'll be a very small.
They're like, yeah, sure, Mark,
like,
sign the check, whatever you want.
I mean, I'm thinking it's going to be like I'll be some, deputy sheriff in the background with a toothpick in my mouth or something, some.
You'll really be pushing your outer limits of your acting ability at that character role, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm doing that, and then I'm looking, just looking at some larger real estate deals. In the lending world I've been in, as far as lending for other investors, my main wheelhouse in the past few years has been like a loan from 100 to 300,000. But I'm looking at some larger deals to do either bridge loans or some equity participation on with that. And then just looking at, another business or two to invest in. the one thing I'm really excited about is I love pickleball. I know you guys are rugby guys, and you're probably, a lot of people haven't heard of pickleball, but it's like the fastest growing sport. And so here in the Nashville and Franklin, Tennessee area, we get rain, and it's really hot in the summer, and it's cold in the winter, and it's windy. So we have all these different conditions where it's helpful to play inside, and it's very fun to play outside when the weather is cooperative. But we want to do an indoor facility, and so I'm starting to spearhead that to try to get some other investors and do a facility that will be a permanent facility that'll be open, 7 days a week, morning to night, and I think that'll be a lot of fun.
And oh, by the way, as a foreshadowing, since we're talking movies, I'll foreshadow a future episode with Jules and Stacy from OEM Gear. They're going to be
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun with them, and it really is a cool piece of kit. So, folks, if you haven't checked out the Wanderer, and I think it's we'll make sure we get it in the show notes, but it's OEM Gear. And
right.
yeah, it's really a very cool piece of kit. And yeah, having been there, done that, just like you, dragging that stuff, not that we went to the beach that often, but dragging that stuff around, yeah, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, well, it's going to be great for it's great for camping also.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Probably rolls right through all that 6 inches of dead pine needles up in Colorado.
That's right. It stays on the surface with those big floater wheels. Well, Mark, this has been great, man. And for me, I think just what I learned was just that re-emphasis of how do you accept risk? How do you even when you're hardwired, like a couple of engineers, you get it drilled into your head and you've got all these processes and systems. There's still ways that you can come to terms and make the risk of whatever it is you're doing, whether it's, a cash investment or a whole new line of business and then, whatever, you can make that acceptable if you put the right work, put some legwork into it, talk to some folks, understand it better, and then make it acceptable. So I appreciate that. Camden,
Yeah.
what'd you learn?
Well, I learned in kind of in the same vein, actually. You're talking to some Mark about the emotional toll that you would have early on when some things weren't going as well. And it really just made me think too, the greatest athletes have short memories. And it's the same type of thing there, where it's like, if you sit and dwell on that, then it's going to put you in a position to where you can't achieve in the future. And so you have to have that short memory so that you can keep moving forward and, achieve the next thing. And then this isn't too much of what I learned, but I got to put this out there, Dad, because otherwise somebody's going to put a comment somewhere. Jimi Hendrix, not Prince, on Purple Haze.
Oh, yes.
You're thinking of Purple Rain.
Purple Rain, I was thinking about. Yes, you were right.
I wrote that down. I was like, I got to mention this, otherwise we're going to catch heat.
The songs are getting mixed up in my head. You hit this point in life, son, and yeah, it's just purple. That's all I can remember. Purple.
Yeah. So I actually did. There was a college buddy that I went to school with that he would call me Purple Haze. That was a nickname it was just one person. He was the only guy that ever said that. So it's not the worst thing I've ever been called.
Yeah, that's right. That's an acceptable nickname, I would say. Not one you're like embarrassed when people.
Right.
Mark, what'd you learn?
Man, I learned that I want to go to those breakfasts that you were talking about in Colorado. I mean, that sounded delicious. But no, I mean, I'll tell you something I learned is I think it's more of a comment versus but I think it's just really neat and cool that father son have a connection. You guys are still in two different states. And, you know, you guys could definitely just stay in touch and by the phone or emails or text. But I think just doing a podcast together like this, where you're conversing with someone else, is a powerful connection between the two. So, you know, with me having 3 boys and a girl, I really hope to do something like this. It might not be exactly a podcast, but do something where we can connect more than just the traditional ways when I get older.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how can folks get in touch with you, find out, you know, keep track of all these new projects you got going on too?
Yeah. So my website is bridgesouthinvestments.com. So that's bridgesouthinvestments with an S.com. And there you'll find my contact information on there from there. So that's the best way.
Awesome.
I'm on LinkedIn also, but there's probably like 1,000 Mark Hayeses. So it might be kind of hard to find unless you're looking for the bald-headed guy.
That narrows it down to 500. Yeah. Oh man, it's been great, Mark. Man,
yeah, it's been fun
today and sharing some great knowledge about how to get into investments and folks get on his website, follow him. So when that book comes out, you can get on there and pick up some great lessons. Cause you know, somebody told me one time, real estate ain't going away anytime soon. They ain't making no more of it either. So
that's right.
I was thinking that early on is like real estate is kind of like what drove me to ag. It's like, yeah, that ain't going anywhere.
That's right. That's right. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, Mark Hayes, for joining us today, and our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.